The dying light, the Crucible Station hung in the void like a monument to failure. Once, it had been the jewel of the Galactic Coalition, a fortress city where a dozen species gathered to celebrate their unity. Their strength, their certainty that the old wars were behind them. Now its outer rings were dark, half its docking bays blown open to vacuum, and the Grand Council chamber where treaties had been signed was a tomb for those who'd believed in them. Admiral Kyreth of the Cerithian hegemony stood at the observation deck, all four of his hands clasped behind his carapace-plated back. Through the reinforced crystal, he watched another refugee fleet limp into what remained of the station's protective zone. 47 ships. There had been 200 when they'd fled the Peridia System 3 cycles ago. The Krell had found them in transit. The Vornal Defense Fleet is requesting permission to fall back to the inner territories, his aide said quietly, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of grief that her species couldn't suppress. They've lost 60% of their capital ships. Commander Vesela is asking, tell Vesela that if he abandons the outer reach, 17 colony worlds will be exposed within a solar week. Kyreth's voice was flat. He'd given this answer so many times it had become a reflex. Tell him to hold. Sir, they can't, I know. The words hung between them like a confession. They both knew what hold meant now. It meant die slowly instead of quickly. It meant buying time measured in days while the Krell Dominion ground forward with the inevitability of entropy itself. Kyreth turned from the window. The command center behind him was a shadow of its former glory. Half the stations unmanned, the holographic displays showing nothing but red. Losing territory, losing fleets, losing worlds. How long until the council convenes? He asked. They're waiting for you now, Admiral. Of course they were, waiting to argue, to blame, to propose strategies that had failed 100 times before. The Cerithians blamed the Veldrani for their conservative tactics. The Veldrani blamed the Korath for their reckless charges. The Korath blamed everyone for not understanding that honor demanded they face the Krell head-on. Ship to ship, warrior to warrior, right up until the Krell's superior numbers and emotionless efficiency tore them apart. Kyreth had stopped caring about blame. There was enough to go around, and none of it would matter when the last coalition world went dark. He made his way through corridors that still bore scorch marks from the Krell boarding assault 6 months ago. The station had held barely. Since then, they'd all learned what it meant to fight the Krell up close. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. They didn't even hate you. They just expanded, consumed, and moved on. The council chamber's doors opened with a pneumatic hiss that sounded too loud in the silence. Inside, the surviving members of the Galactic Coalition Command waited around a circular table that had once seated 30 representatives. Now there were 11. Admiral Kyreth, Matriarch Selen of the Veldrani, spoke first, her silver skin catching the dim light. We've received your report on the Peridia evacuation. Another difficult loss. Difficult. What a diplomatic word for catastrophe. The Krell are adapting faster than we can respond, Kyreth said, taking his position at the table. They've learned to predict our jump coordinates. They're targeting our supply lines before we even establish them, and their production capacity. He gestured to the holographic display that materialized above the table's center. Intelligence suggests they're manufacturing warships at a rate that exceeds our entire remaining industrial output by a factor of 7. Then we must sue for peace, said Counselor Rex, the Korath war leader, his tusks clicking together in agitation. Negotiate terms. They don't negotiate. Rex, you know this. High Chancellor Orin of the Aquilan Ascendancy leaned forward, his crystalline features reflecting the red warning lights that dominated the display. We've sent 47 separate diplomatic missions. The Krell respond to each one the same way. They destroy the envoy ship and continue their advance. Then we fight to the last, Rex roared, slamming a massive fist on the table. We die with honor rather than flee like... We die either way. Kyreth's quiet voice cut through the bluster like a blade. That is the situation. We can die with honor, die fleeing, die negotiating, die praying to whatever gods we still believe in. The Krell do not care about our pride, our courage, our righteousness. They care about expansion and resource acquisition. We are resources. They will acquire us. The silence that followed was absolute. Matriarch Selen's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. Then this is the end. Perhaps not. Every head turned toward the far end of the table where Ambassador Talvin of the Exploratory Guild sat in his hover seat. The elderly Veldrani had been silent throughout the meeting. his attention fixed on a data tablet that glowed softly in his lap. "Talvin," Chancellor Oren said carefully, "if you have intelligence, we don't— not intelligence. A possibility." The old ambassador's fingers danced across his tablet, and the holographic display shifted. A new star system appeared. Unremarkable yellow star, third planet highlighted. 4 cycles ago, my guild made contact with a developing species in Sector 447. Standard first contact protocols. We observed, cataloged, prepared to extend an invitation to the greater community once they achieved sufficient technological markers. "We don't have time for expansion paperwork," Rex growled. "No, but we may have time for this." Talvin expanded the display. The planet rotated slowly, blue and green and white, achingly beautiful in its unscarred wholeness. The species calls themselves humans. Their planet, Earth, they are unusual. Unusual how? Kirith felt something stir in his chest. Not hope, he wasn't fool enough for that. Curiosity, perhaps. They are pre-coalition by our standards. They haven't achieved faster-than-light travel beyond their own system. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. No energy shields, no gravitic weapons, no neural interface systems. Talvin paused. But they have something else. The display changed again, showing footage that made several council members recoil. Cities in flames, weapons of terrifying simplicity and devastating effect, soldiers advancing through smoke and death with expressions that spoke of a determination that went beyond reason. "They have war," Talvin said quietly. "Not the war we know, organized, strategic, limited by convention and honor. They have industrialized slaughter. They have genocide. They have nuclear weapons they've actually used on each other. They have spent their entire recorded history perfecting the art of killing their own kind, and they've gotten very, very good at it." "You want us to ally with primitives?" Chancellor Oren's voice dripped with disbelief. "Savages who can't even achieve interstellar peace?" "I want us to ally with survivors." Talvin met each council member's eyes in turn. Every species in this room achieved coalition status by evolving past our warlike nature. We learned cooperation, diplomacy, sustainable conflict resolution. We became civilized. The humans. They're still learning. They're still fighting. They're still hungry. They would be slaughtered, Matriarch Selen said, but her voice held uncertainty. What could they possibly offer against the Krell? "I don't know," Talvin admitted. "But I know this. Every tactical doctrine we have, every strategic principle, every rule of engagement, the Krell have adapted to all of it. They've learned to fight civilized warfare and beat us at it. Perhaps," he gestured to the burning cities on the display, "perhaps it's time to show them uncivilized warfare." Kirith stared at the blue planet, at the footage of humans doing terrible things to each other with frightening efficiency. He thought of the 17 colony worlds that would fall when Commander Vesila's fleet inevitably broke. He thought of the 47 ships that had once been 200. He thought of the way the Krell advanced like a tide, uncaring and unstoppable. "Make contact," he said. "Admiral?" Chancellor Oren began. "Make contact," Kirith repeated, his voice carrying command weight that silenced all protest. "We are dying. I will not spend our last days arguing about pride when there's even a fraction of a chance that these humans might see something we've missed. Ambassador Talvin, send your delegation. Make them understand what's at stake." "And if they refuse?" Rex asked. Kirith looked at the burning cities one more time, at the soldiers who kept advancing despite everything, at the species that had looked extinction in the face more than once and somehow clawed their way back. "Then we die," he said simply. "But if they say yes—" He trailed off, not daring to finish the thought. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you vulnerable. Hope could break you when it died, but in the end it was all they had left. The message. The message reached Earth's orbital defense network on a Tuesday. It came in on every frequency simultaneously: radio, laser, quantum entanglement channels that shouldn't have existed yet. Every satellite, every deep space array, every jury-rigged listening post that humanity had scattered through the solar system suddenly screamed with the same signal: "We are dying. We need help. Will you answer?" At the UN Security Council's emergency session in Geneva, the Secretary-General stared at the translated message on the screen before her, then at the faces of the representatives around the table. "It's a joke," the Russian ambassador said flatly. Or a test. Or a very elaborate hoax. The signal is coming from outside the solar system, Admiral Marcus Reeves of the United Earth Defense Force countered. And the energy output required to broadcast it this way. He shook his head. We couldn't do this with every power plant on Earth combined. So it's real. The Chinese representative leaned back, fingers steepled. Aliens are asking us for military aid. Against another alien threat that's apparently destroying them, the American delegate added. Does anyone else feel like we're massively underqualified for this? The message includes coordinates, Secretary General Amara Chen said, pulling up another display. And this. The screen filled with star maps, tactical data, and footage that made the room go quiet. Worlds burning, fleets dying, cities that made Earth's megalopolises look like villages being systematically dismantled, and advancing through it all, ship after ship of identical design, moving with mechanical precision. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. They want us to fight that? The Russian ambassador's skepticism had transformed into horror. With what? We have 3 ships capable of operating beyond Mars, and 2 of them are research vessels. They're desperate, Admiral Reeves said quietly. His eyes hadn't left the footage of the alien fleets being torn apart. I've seen that look before. In Berlin, in Stalingrad, in every last stand humanity's ever fought. They're not asking us because we're strong. They're asking us because they've tried everything else. The translation matrices they sent include a contact protocol, Secretary General Chen continued. They want to send a delegation to Earth to make their case in person. The room erupted in argument. Security concerns, contamination protocols. The very real possibility that this was some kind of trap or invasion pretext. But Chen waited them out, watching the footage loop on the screen. Alien cities dying. Alien children, or whatever their young were called, fleeing. Alien soldiers making last stands that looked achingly familiar. We're going to say yes, she said when the room finally quieted. Madam Secretary. Several voices began at once. We're going to say yes, she repeated, her voice carrying the weight of decision that came with her office. Because if we don't, and this is real, we'll have to live knowing we could have helped and chose safety instead. And because, she gestured to the screen, because if something like that ever reaches our system, we're going to want someone to answer our call too. They're asking us to send military aid, the Russian ambassador pressed, to involve ourselves in an interstellar war. This could paint a target on Earth. The target might already be there. Admiral Reeves pulled up a tactical map. If this Krell Dominion operates the way it appears to, systematic expansion, no negotiation, resource extraction, then Earth's not safe by staying neutral. We're safe by making sure they never get close enough to notice us. And right now there's an entire galactic coalition dying to keep them away. So we're considering this? The American delegate looked around the table. Actually considering sending Earth forces into an alien war? I'm considering meeting with them, Chen said, listening to what they have to offer, what they're asking for, what the real strategic situation is. Then we make a decision. She looked at Admiral Reeves. Marcus, I want you to assemble a team. Military advisors, scientists, diplomats, people who can actually evaluate whether we have anything to contribute. If we're going to do this, I want to know exactly what we're walking into. And if we decide it's suicide? The Chinese representative asked. Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching alien worlds burn on the screen. Then we tell them we're sorry, she said finally, and we hope we never have to make that call ourselves. The vote took 2 hours and came down to a single abstention. Earth would receive the delegation. Earth would listen. Whether Earth would answer the call remained to be seen. 3 days later, a ship that shouldn't have been possible decelerated into Earth orbit. It was small, elegant, and carried technology that made every physicist on the planet simultaneously excited and terrified. The delegation consisted of 5 beings, led by Ambassador Talven, who looked at humanity with eyes that held both hope and profound weariness. "Thank you for seeing us," he said in perfect English, courtesy of translation technology that humanity was decades from developing. "I know this must be overwhelming. I know you have questions. But before we discuss anything else, I need you to understand something." He pulled up a holographic display that showed the Krell advance, real-time, updated to the hour. "We have 4 months," Talvin said quietly. "Maybe 5 if we're lucky. That's how long until the Coalition's last defensive line breaks. After that, the Krell will have clear access to every remaining inhabited system, including the route to your sector. So whatever you decide quickly." Admiral Reeves, standing in his dress uniform beside Secretary General Chen, stared at the advancing red tide on the map. "Tell us everything," he said. "And I mean everything. What you're facing, what you've tried, why you think we can help when your entire galaxy couldn't." Talvin's expression, alien as it was, somehow conveyed profound relief. "It's a long story," he said. "We've got 4 months," Reeves replied. "Start talking." And in a conference room overlooking Earth's blue-green surface, humanity learned exactly what it looked like when civilizations died. The question was, could they do anything to stop it? To be continued in Part 2. The Blackstar Initiative.